Hello fellow booktubers, my name is Lauren and you're watching Dreams Books Courage. Today I'm going to be talking about my to-be read shelf for 2014. I figured I should do this since I haven't done any book hauls on this channel yet, so I'll just go ahead and show you all of the books that I have on my shelves that I have not read yet, so in the future I can just do monthly book hauls. I'll be showing you the books in the order in which I purchased them, so I'll start from a few years back and work my way up to the last few months. So first, I'll start with a book I've had on my to-be read shelf the longest, and that is Ida B by Catherine Hannigan. And this is a story of a girl who is homeschooled, and she is forced to go to public school. This is a middle grade book, and I'm sure it'd be a super quick read for when I finally get around to reading it. I'm hoping to read this before the new year because I definitely feel like I should read this. I'm planning on this just being a short middle grade coming of age story about a girl, and I figured since I already have it, I should just go ahead and read it soon. Next, I have 24 Girls in 7 Days by Alex Bradley. This is about a guy whose friend set him up with an ad in the school paper advertising for a date to prom with him. A surprising amount of girls actually answer the ad, and so he is forced with the task to go on 24 dates in just a week to see who he will be taking to prom. Obviously, girls have very dramatic and different personalities, so I'm hoping that this will be a quick contemporary read that will be super interesting. Another book that I've had for a very long time but I have not yet picked up is Breaking Dawn by Stephanie Meyer, and a lot of you are like, how have you not read this book yet? Well, I have read the other 3 books in the Twilight series, but I just couldn't really get through this book at the time, so I'm hoping I'll be able to get to this soon, since I want to go ahead and finish out the series that I've already read so much of. Next up, I have 2 books that my boyfriend actually purchased for me around Valentine's Day, so I'll go ahead and show those to you now. First up, I have The 10th Circle by Jodi Picoult, and obviously Jodi Picoult is a very well-known author who writes very deep stories that a lot of people love, and I'm sure this one is no exception. This one tells the story of a girl whose dad is a comic book artist, and he's very protective of his daughter, and one day a boy walks into her life, and thus the plot ensues. So I'm really looking forward to this book, not just because it's by Jodi Picoult, but also because it has little comic book illustrations throughout the story and puts a very interesting spin on the story. And then he also picked up Hollow City for me by Ransom Riggs, and since I did not yet have the first book, I went ahead and picked up Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children by Ransom Riggs, and I have not yet had the chance to read these books, but I've heard amazing things about them, especially from Jesse the Reader. He absolutely loves these books, and I know that Miss Peregrine's is actually going to be made into a movie that comes out in 2016, so I'm super excited to get to reading these books. And hopefully I'll be scared while reading these books, but I've heard that they're not really scary as much as they are just plain creepy. So I'm still really excited to get to this series. And since I got Miss Peregrine's from Barnes & Noble online, I decided to go ahead and make it worth the order and pick up another series that I really wanted to start reading. And so I got the Bloodline series by Rochelle Mead, starting with Bloodlines, then The Golden Lily, followed by The Indigo Spill, and at the time, The Fury Heart was the final book that was out yet within the series. To understand what happens in Bloodlines, you need to read the Vampire Academy series first, which I'd highly recommend, and that is exactly what made me pick up the Bloodline series as well. One day, I was casually strolling through Barnes & Noble when I passed by Dreams of Gods and Monsters when it first came out by Laini Taylor, and no, I have not yet read or picked up the other 2 books in this trilogy, but I saw it and I had to have it for one very specific reason. In the back of this gigantic book was this specially made drawing by Laini Taylor, and although it might just be a copy of the drawing, this is Laini Taylor's signature, and so I just knew I had to have it because I'm sure I love the series. I've heard nothing but good things about it, and I really love it whenever I come across a signature from the actual author. Next up, I have a book that makes me feel super nerdy, mostly because I got it from my math teacher, and it's called Flatland by Edwin A. Abbott. Guys are actually shapes, and the amounts of sides they have determines what their social rank is, and where girls are lines. And so, just off of that alone, it sounds super interesting, but maybe a bit confusing, but I'm definitely excited to see a world that I've never even heard of before. Next up, I have 9 literary classics that I actually received from my English teacher. whether it was because the books are old and damaged or it's because she no longer uses them for her class. She was giving out free classics, and so I definitely knew I had to pick some up. So first up, I have The Red Pony by John Steinbeck. Steinbeck is most known for his work, The Grapes of Wrath, but I've heard mixed reviews on that, so I feel like it's safer for me to start with this tiny story from Steinbeck about a horse and his boy, and that's pretty much all I know about the story, but I'm just excited to read this super quick classic read. And next up, I have The Sound and the Fury by William Faulkner, and let me just say that I love this cover. It's super eerie and has a graveyard and a sunset, and literally all I know about the book is just this cover. And it doesn't say very much about it on the back, and so I'm just ready to go into this book without knowing anything except that I'm sure it's going to be filled with symbols. Faulkner is just known for being an amazing literary writer. I have The Last of the Mohicans by James Fenimore Cooper, and this is definitely a super damaged copy. The covers are almost falling off, but I'm still excited to read this. I've heard good things about this, but all I basically know is that it tells the story of an Indian, and there definitely aren't that many stories about Indians. And since this is part of my Native American culture and Native American roots, I decided I should just go ahead and pick this up and see the different picture this paints of American history. Next up, I have something of a duology, and that is The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn and also The Adventures of Tom Sawyer, both by Mark Twain, and these are definitely literary classics. They're usually read within schools. I know at least Huck Finn is considered on the banned books list, but I still feel like these are definitely books that need to be taught in schools. I'm definitely going to be reading this one in English next year. I went ahead and picked up The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien, and I'm really excited to read this. I've seen all of the Lord of the Rings movies along with the Hobbit movies, and I know that the final Hobbit movie is coming out very soon, so I'm hoping to read this book before that comes out. I know that this is a very detailed book, and a lot of people suggest you read the Lord of the Rings trilogy first, but hopefully I can just go ahead and dive in Middle-earth and get through this book. Next up, I have an autobiography by an acclaimed author who recently passed away, and that is I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings by Maya Angelou. And luckily, I picked this book up right before she passed away, but every quote I've heard from Maya Angelou, it just speaks straight to my heart, and I just know that I'll love this book because everything I've ever heard from Maya Angelou was just beautiful, and the excerpts I've read from I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings are just awesome, and I know this is a very deep tale of her life and what she's been through, and I'm really excited to read her work. The Pilgrim's Progress is a book that was first published as a little pamphlet in the 1600s, so this book has been around for a long time, and I'm really excited to read this book just because of all the acclaim it has gotten in the past and the fact that people are still reading it to this day. I'm not sure what it's about. I know that it tells the story of someone who definitely goes on a life-changing journey, and I love those kind of books. And the final classic I got from my English teacher is the one I'm most excited about, and that is Fahrenheit 451, which is the tale of a world in which all books that are found must be burned. If these firemen find a book within your house, they will burn down your entire house. That's a crazy way to live, and I just can't even imagine a world without books. That sounds horrific, so I'm definitely excited to read what that world might be like. And I'm sure this book will show exactly how big of an impact books make in our lives. From what I've heard, this sounds a lot like The Book Thief and how the Nazis burned books during Hitler's reign, so I'm definitely excited to read a book that goes along the same lines as that. The next book I actually got for free off of iBooks, and that is Talented by Sophie Davis. All I know about this book is that it features a girl assassin, and that's all I really need to know about this book, because mention the words girl assassin to me and that book already sounds a whole lot of awesome. And hopefully it will be like the Throne of Glass series, because I know so many people love those books as well, and so I'm hoping that this book will feature a girl assassin that is as awesome as that. Next up is a book that caught my mom's eye, and it just made her want to buy it for me. So here I have The Bookstore by Deborah Myler. I've never heard of this book talked about at all on BookTube, and it seemed really interesting. It tells the story of a girl who is living in New York, and she's working at a bookstore, and those are two things that I love already. but the plot thickens whenever she finds out that she's pregnant and her boyfriend actually just broke up with her. So a lot of interesting things are happening within the story, but the fact that it takes place in New York City and it features a bookstore just makes me want to read it so much more, and so I'm definitely excited to pick this up. And speaking of New York City, whenever I went to New York City in June, I actually picked up a whole lot of books from the Strand and Barnes & Noble. So first I'll talk about the books that I got from the Strand. First up, I have Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. And I really love this cover, and that's what made me pick it up. Even though the price only said $4, this was a super great deal on this book. And I really love this cover, except for this little part right here that says now a major motion picture. That didn't really need to be on this cover, and I can't take it off. But other than that, I think this cover is beautiful. The real reason why I wanted this book is because it takes place in the Victorian era in England. And since I love all of Jane Austen's books, I'm hoping this is kind of similar to those because I just love England in the Victorian era. That is one of my favorite eras. And so I'm definitely excited to read this just based on those two things. Next up is a book that caught my eye a lot of times, but I never decided to pick it up until I went to the Strand and they just had an amazing price on it. And that is Winter Girls by Laurie Halse Anderson. And by the way, I love this cover. I recently talked about it in Top 5 Wednesday just because this was a definite cover buy, but also because it's by Laurie Halse Anderson, and I've never read any of her books, but I've heard that they're super deep and really interesting stories that no one really talks about, and this is definitely one of those. And this is about a girl who loses her best friend because she was anorexic, and also the main character in the story is anorexic, and it's just her journey through her life, and hopefully her getting better from that. But these two girls used to have contests to see who would be skinnier than the other, so it's definitely a very deep book. And I'm really excited to read it because I've never heard anything like it before. I'm going to end up splitting this video into 2 videos, so just be expecting the next one very, very soon. So I'm hoping that this will be a quick contemporary read that